Okay, welcome back. And now we want to do a segment on scientific calculators. So, a scientific calculator, and the one that we're going to be using is this one here. It's a Texas Instruments 30XA calculator. And you do not need a programmable calculator for any of my courses, and you don't even need a graphing calculator. So one like this is going to be perfectly suitable. You'll know that it's a scientific calculator because it will have the buttons that say sine, cosine, and tangent on it. Now, we're not really going to be using those buttons in any of my classes. In astronomy, we will use the TAN button once, and then we will also use the LOG button once. Other than that, we don't use any of those fancy buttons. Now, I'm going to show them to you just so in some future course, if you ever need to use those buttons, you'll be able to do them. You'll know that it's a scientific calculator if it's got the sine, the cosine, and the tangent. And why do we need a scientific calculator? Is so that we can enter numbers in scientific notation, which we've already talked about. Okay, so let's learn how to use this. Now, what I want you to do is go onto the internet and type in this name, Alden Bradford. Okay, so let's go to the internet, and then when you type in his name, you're going to find a link to this website, Alden Bradford. And then the thing that we want is this thing here, which is a simulated calculator. So if you're going to click on this one, and we have a working calculator that you can press all the buttons on it. And so that's the one that we're going to do. However, this is a little bit small, so that if you go to this dot 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 thing over here, then we can make it larger so that we can see all of the buttons on it. Okay, then so let me just adjust this a little bit more. Okay, I think that'll work. And so now if you press the buttons on this calculator, you see that it gives you a display here. And so we're going to first let's go ahead and clear that. So it's got a 0 on there. Okay, and now let's go back to our notes and go to the next slide. And the first thing that we're going to do with our calculator is make sure that you know what the second function key is. So that's this green one right here. That's called the second function key. On some calculators, it's also called the shift key. And on some calculators, you might even have more than one. You might have a third function. So you might have a green one and then another red one. So it all depends on how many second function things you got here. So you'll notice that, for example, the actual button here says LOG, but then above it, it says 10 to the X. So if you ever needed to access the 10 to the X button, then you'd have to press the second function key and then press the LOG key. So in this example here, if you want to get to e to the x, which is the exponential, so you'll notice it's right here, e to the x, and it's above the ln button. So you would need to press the second function key and then the ln button. So make sure and know where your shift key is located at. All right, let's go to our next one here. And this is, I like to call it the flipper button. So it takes any number and it flips it upside down. So let's say, for example, you want to know what 1/4 is. Now, I deliberately picked that because you should already know what 1 divided by 4 is. It's 0.25. But let's pretend that we didn't know that. So what we're going to do is press 4, and then we're going to press this button here that says 1/x, and you see that it changed it into 0.25. So it took the number and it flipped it upside down. I don't know if this has any real name to it. I guess you would call this the multiplicative inverse button. There. Okay, so it's a handy button to have. You don't absolutely have to do it, because after all, you could always take 1 and then divide by 4 and you get 0.25. But this saves you one step if you do it. So it's not critical that you know about that button. Okay, let's go to our next one here. And this one is more like the additive inverse button. Because let's say that you want to enter a negative number on your calculator. So you want to enter the number negative 7.3. So I am going to press 7.3, and then I need to change that into a negative number. So this button down here at the bottom is the flipper button. So I'm going to press that button, and you see that it put a negative in front of it. So now I've got negative 7.3. Now what do you think is going to happen if I press it again? So what's a negative of a negative? Then it would be a positive. So you see, if I press it again, it changed it back to 7.3. This is a really, really critical button for you to be able to find on your calculator. You've got to know where that's located at. Okay, and so let's go to another topic here. And this is going to allow us to enter numbers in scientific notation on our calculator. It's a critical button. You really need to know about the EE button. And so we're going to cover that in our next segment.